Welcome to the Stories with Traction podcast. I'm your host, Matt ZAUN. Thank you for joining us as we uncover how stories are one of the most important aspects of your business. We'll talk about struggles, victories, and how you can utilize strategic storytelling to inspire those around you to action. Enjoy this episode. I'm so excited because today we are joined by Ramon Ray, who is the author of Celebrity CEO: How Entrepreneurs Can Thrive by Building Community and a Strong Personal Brand. In addition, he's a keynote speaker and a best-selling author. And I'm excited to dive into different elements of what he speaks on and what he's passionate about, which is really helping the entrepreneur community. And I think you're going to get a lot of value out of our conversation. So thank you so much for joining us, Ramon. Thank you for being here. I'm excited to dive into what you do.
Matt, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. Good to be here and serve your community. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're really close too. A lot of people I interview, I just got done interviewing a lady that lives in Alaska. So I've been interviewing a lot of people all over the country. We're really close. I'm in the Philadelphia area. You're in New Jersey. So it is fantastic to talk with someone that's local as well.
Why don't we just open the windows and just do it that way? I can just yell
there
at
we
you.
go. We sometimes that is definitely something we could talk about in the future. Maybe we could do like little smoke flares and stuff like that. That'd be fantastic. So tell me a little bit about where you are right now. So you've been doing a lot of speaking engagements, and I'm sure there's some that are in person, but a lot virtual in our new virtual world. What are some things that you've been seeing that have been reoccurring themes in the entrepreneur space, in the small business and medium-sized business space? So what are some of the different shifts that you've seen based on what's happening right now? So for everyone listening to this recording, obviously there's different things happening with COVID. There is some light at the end of the tunnel where a lot of people are saying that hopefully this is behind us in the months ahead, but there's definitely still a lot of disruption. So what are some of the things that you're seeing with the business leaders that you're dealing with right now that they're shifting, whether it's creativity or innovation? What are some of the things that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think that people are scared. I mean, that's for sure, Matt. And I think, again, thanks for having me here. I think besides being scared, I think it's interesting to see, this is old news, but I think that being more comfortable working from home or working remotely, and my heart does go out. I want to give a shout out to those who can't do that, those food service workers and others like that, who can't just put on a camera and do it. But I think that's the big change. We're all getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And sadly, Matt, I don't think it's behind us. I thought it was, but I think that half of it's fear, half of it's politics, half of it's science. Those are three halves, so that's not really mathematically correct. So more like 1/3 of it is, but you get what I mean, is that sure. I think that, I don't know, because as variants keep coming out, I think that people are going to have to just learn how to deal with this, that we're all going to get sick, we're all going to get colds. But I think that leaders are learning how can I serve my customers in new ways? I think that is still being figured out. Companies who normally would sell, at food carts or in restaurants or things where we met in person are thinking, okay, how can I still deliver a great experience? But it may have to be remote or hybrid. So I think that's the news that's not still quite old yet, even though it's been, 2 years or so. I think that may go for a bit of more time.
Sure. Well, you brought up a good point. I feel like there's been this surge of creativity recently where I'm seeing more and more business leaders figure things out, but from a creative lens. I feel like early on it was frustration and anger and we have to stop this or we can't do this. And I feel like I experienced, and maybe you have experienced the same. In 2021, I felt like the creativity was at an all-time high. The innovation was at an all-time high, which was really awesome to see. And it also opened up a ton of other opportunities because now you have hybrid events. Now you're able to deliver value to customers, to team members from multiple different angles. So one of the things I want to dive into, because I think that you are an absolute genius at this, is you are a content creating machine. So we've been connected on LinkedIn for quite some time. That's how we met. And LinkedIn is my social media channel of choice. It has been absolutely amazing for building business, gaining exposure. And I see a lot of stuff that you put out on LinkedIn, and there's a lot of content that goes into that. Obviously, you're an author. You do a lot of different things regarding marketing with your content. How important has content driven your message out into the world?
Yeah, I think for me, content is everything. And I must say, I want to give honor or give a asterisk, as it were, Matt, and sometimes my English is not great, Matt, so you can help me interpret Ramon, even though we're just speaking now, but is that you can do sales, you can do advertising, you can do word of mouth, you can do billboards, a lot of different ways you can put, educate people or generate awareness. So I want to give full honor to that. There's many ways to generate awareness, but for me and the Ramon Ray brand, definitely it's content. I like it. I like to be on video, like to speak, like to share. And so, yes, that production of a massive amount of overwhelming good content that I think hopefully is to a very specific audience is endearing to many people. My following has increased. I've been able to serve and make a bigger impact doing amazing interviews like this. So I think something is working. And so to your point, yes. And for those listening, kind of a tip I always want to add value is that if you're going to leverage content, I'm not saying it always has to be as much as Ramon does, but I do think that's the magic. That's the secret sauce. A lot, whatever that is, we can talk about it now or later or never, but a lot of content, but that's good content and that always speaks to your core audience. If you do that, you'll be fine. You never heard somebody say, no, I don't want any more tacos with avocados with good salsa. You never heard anybody say that. They're like, no, give me more. That's the way good content is.
Sure. And to echo your point, good content to me is one that speaks to our target audience. So one of the things that I've talked about continuously over the last few months is an ideal client avatar. So for everyone listening that might not be familiar with that terminology, or maybe it's the first time you've heard me say that, is an ideal client avatar is you actually have a picture of that individual in your mind. You understand a little bit about their wants, their needs, their frustrations, their different things that make them angry, who they are. So for me, personally, I primarily deal with CEOs and executives between 45 and 65 years of age. That's good for me to recognize because I understand their pain points. I understand what they're going through. I understand what brings them joy. So there's a lot of different elements. And then I've also I've zoned in on that a little bit more. The overwhelming majority of clients that I work with, they have children. They are into health and fitness, so they're into sports. Why does that matter? Who cares? Well, it matters to me because I structure a lot of the stories that I put out from a content perspective geared towards families, because that's going to be a pain point for them. So I'm constantly talking about my children, utilizing a business principle intertwined with that, because it really speaks to that audience. So absolutely, I really appreciate you mentioning that. A lot of good content. How do you define good content? I define it to speaking to one's direct audience. So with that said, who is typically the audience that you speak to, Ramon?
Sure. We have three audiences. I think one are very, very large billion-dollar technology companies who reach very, very small businesses. They don't always have to be billion-dollar brands, but usually they're growing towards that. So they're either the names we know, Verizon, SAP, big companies like that, or it could be a mid-tier company, a CRM company like Infusionsoft. Now they're named Keep. Companies like that. That's one target audience. They hire and work with Ramon to keynote, MC, things like that. The second audience that we have are large events. So that's event managers who are hosting big events of a big budget, and they're looking for great speakers. And the last segment are the very, very small businesses who are looking to grow. That's where I have my fan base of thousands of people, my message of small business ownership. So those are the three buckets we have, which map towards how I make my money. And so that's why I serve.
That's really interesting because I feel like there are people that deal with one or the other. And it's really interesting to hear you having all those different pieces put together. So you're talking about the billion-dollar brands, and then you're talking about the startups. So how did you get into the startup space? Was there a big great awakening moment? Was there an aha type moment where you thought, hey, I really need to help startups and offer them tips and value because I see that there's different blind spots they may not be seeing? Was there a moment like that, or was it something that just organically happened in your life?
No, sure. I like it. And to be clear for me, not so much the startup, even though it could be, because for me, Matt, but I'd love to know your insights on this. I see a startup as one who's growing to be a bigger company, $1 billion brand, software company typically. But for me, that third audience, just to be clear, and I'd love to get your input though, I think literally the very small business, Mary, who's the accountant, who has 2 people, and she's been running that business for 20 years. Those people, that startup I see as the, 2 girls in a garage with a cat. They just got $100 million in funding from Google and they're going like a rocket ship. I can help them, but they're more so for fast company, startup grind. There's pools for them. So I just wanted to add that slight political differentiation, right? Like people often talk about, Ramon, is being an entrepreneur the same thing as being a small business owner? I think, Matt, every small business owner needs to have a little bit of entrepreneurial or a lot in them, but every entrepreneur doesn't have to be a small business owner. But that could be potato. What does Matt think, even though it's his show?
There we go. No, that's a really good point. So I think about the baker that lives down the street from me.
Yes.
And this individual has been in the community for, oh my gosh, over 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Bakes incredible cakes for weddings, has a thriving small business, is a staple in the town I live in. Is there some elements of being an entrepreneur in this individual? Kind of, but really they want to stay the same. Right. They want to bring in consistent revenue. They're not really looking to really crank out a lot of content. They're not looking to write a book. They're not looking to start a podcast. They're not looking to do things that are going to get their message out in the world more. They're not looking to franchise. They're not looking to take it to the next level. That's what I would consider, in my opinion, a small business. They're trying to stay even keel. They're not really trying to grow up, but they're not trying to go down. And then I work with people that I'm sure you do as well, where they are hustling. You had the mug when we started, hustle, right? Man, they're out, they're grinding day in and day out, and they're hustling, and they're, one of the things that I say every day, it's based on the Every Day I'm Hustling song, but every day I'm marketing. Every day I'm marketing, right? And it's funny because my son picks up on that. So now every time there's a marketing opportunity, he says, Dad, every day you're marketing, you got to capture this and throw it out in content. So that's the entrepreneur in me. So that's what I equate. So basically, based on your definition, these individuals have received some type of round of funding, and now you take over and you take them from being okay or good to exceptional.
The startup has that, right? Who's not who I serve so much, but not about me so much. I meant from the very small business, yes. But you asked how I got started as well. And I think that the starting point, I think, happened by accident, Matt. And I'd love to get your input on this too. Are entrepreneurs born or nurtured? And I think for me, I don't know what the answer is, but I think they have to be born because they have to have a little bit of risk in them. If you're not risk tolerant, if you're not willing to get punched in the face, as Gary Vaynerchuk has talked about, things like that, it's hard. So my point is how I started was just a regular guy, a dude born to great family. But the short of it is I got my first well-paying job, as it were. I worked at a grocery store. I got this beautiful cut. By the way, anybody listening to this who ever worked at a grocery store and box cutters and was the stock boy or stock girl, email me and say hi. That was one of my first jobs. Opening the boxes and taking the tomatoes and putting on the cans on the store shelves. But bottom line, I got my first professional job, as it were, in an office at the United Nations. And I worked there for many, many years as an office manager and then managing the office and things like that. But I had, Matt, the entrepreneurial bug inside me. I don't know why, but for some reason, back then reading Inc. magazine, reading Black Enterprise, I think Fast Company was launched somewhere around there as well, 20 something years ago. I remember the first issue. I liked it, just reading the pages of a guy or a gal starting a business. And so my first business was a computer consulting company, small, Matt, just me, generating 100,000, give or take, or whatever, year. I had a full-time job still, but just me doing consulting. Anybody know Microsoft Access? Woo, woo. LAN cables? Woo, woo, or going to Radio Shack and having a little plastic, you take the strip off the back, you stick it to your wall and open up the little shell, right, and stick the cables inside. I don't know, but now we just have Wi-Fi. But that was my first job at the UN. And then what I was trying to get to is that people would ask, hey, Ramon, and I'm looking back and forth here. Y'all can't see this, but hey, Ramon, could you help me with my computer? And I'm like, yeah, can you pay me? So sure. That was kind of my first venture into entrepreneurship and started a few companies. I started 4 companies, sold 2 of them, author of many books. And then I was fired. I was fired, by the way, for having my own business. And that's a whole story in itself. But that was the start of Ramon Ray. And today we have SmartHustle.com. And as I said, work with the large brands on our agency side. We have a community of very, very small businesses. And then working with companies to hire Ramon to speak all around the world.
Awesome. So one of the things I want to expand on the point that you mentioned, then I want to dive into Smart Hustle. And you had said that I want to dive into different tips and
Sure.
different elements of the smart hustle. But one of the things that you had mentioned about being born, I do think there's multiple elements, right? There's the nature versus nurture element. I do think that's a component of it. So for anyone listening that isn't familiar with the Enneagram, I highly recommend people look into it. So there's many different personality systems that you can go through. I found the Enneagram is extremely intensive. It dives into people's personalities on a very deep level. The Enneagram, just very Cliff Notes, brief version of it. It's not anything new. It's been around for over 2,000 years. And there's different elements of personality. So for anyone familiar with it, I'm a 3 with a strong 4 wing. So that is the achieving type personality. So it's basically my pleasure zone, if you will, my pleasure, my passions, everything gears up to achievement and doing and offering value, but from really an achieving type perspective. So because that's my natural state, it gears me more towards the entrepreneurship level because I want to continue to be go, do. And there's different personalities that they want safety. Safety is part of the aspect of pleasure for them. It's going to be very difficult for individuals like that to go into the kind of environments you're talking about. So I think it's a little bit of both. My father was also one of the hardest working human beings I've ever met in my entire life. My father did double Ironman triathlons. So if you're familiar with an Ironman, double Ironman. So he did that. So that was how I was programmed, was an insane work ethic. So I saw that in front of me as well. So I think there's different elements to it. So I appreciate you bringing that up. So for everyone listening, more than likely, because I know my audience, the audiences I speak to and on LinkedIn and the podcast, you're probably in a go-getter, a hustle, a driven type box. And I want to talk about smart hustle, speaking of hustling. So there's smart hustling, and then there's hustling done where people want to rip their hair out and it's not effective hustling at all. So what are some of the different things that you would mention that's a smart hustle versus a foolish hustle?
Yeah, I think hustle, you're right. Just hustle is not good enough. And that would be equivalent to the foolish hustle. And I think we can all do very, very hard work. We can all scramble. But let's take, for example, clients and customers, things like that. In my case, what happens? You have a very, very big company that has hired Matt to speak at their event. That's the hustle. But Matt knows they're a big company and they do 20 events. The smart hustle is just even asking, hey, I noticed you had 20 events. I know you already had me, but would you like to have me do some different topics at other events? That's an idea. Number 3, hey, I have a buddy, this guy who shaves his head every Friday over a sink, Ramon. I can interview him at your 7th event to give some fresh content. Would you like me to bring you other buddies and gals I know to your event? So that's a silly example, Matt, but those listening, that's the kind of idea of smart hustle. Hustle the grind. Matt or Ramon, whoever, we can get the one gig, the one deal, the one contract. But the smart is, how can I now take what I'm having and 10x it, do it better, smarter? That's what I try to do in business. And I think whether that's what marketing software are you using, how are you serving your customers better? Do you have an executive assistant? Most people listening probably do, but those who are new to business, are you doing it solo? No, hire somebody to help you. Are you up late at night with QuickBooks or something, or Xero or whatever tool you want to use, Zoho, whatever the tool is, at 3 o'clock in the morning? No, get a bookkeeper or accountant to help you with that. So is that helpful?
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So I think of a friend of mine, Penny Zanker, who is an amazing speaker. She talks about the difference between performance management versus time management. And there is a big difference, right? So to her, time management is you have your schedule and there's different blocks and you're grinding it out and you're making sure that your time fits within these different blocks. And to her, performance management is there is a way that you can do it with less effort, but get just as much or maybe a little bit less of a result, but your time is so much less that you're giving to a certain project that if you look at the return on investment from a dollar perspective, it goes off the charts. So when you were saying, okay, if they have multiple events, why not just ask, hey, can I speak at multiple events? Because that's the performance management. Or you could send out 20 emails to, or however you're doing your sales pipeline process, to 20 other entities, which is, from a time perspective, it might fit within a certain block of time, but it's not that performance management. It's not 10Xing like you said. So I really appreciate that. So you would say duplicating efforts is a big part of smart hustle versus foolish hustle?
That's one for sure. One big thing is just to make it easier. Do what you're doing. Matt and I are already friends, and I swept this floor. Matt, can I paint your wall too? He already trusts me. Let's do that too.
Yeah. And also, a lot of times we think that our clients know everything about us once they do business with us.
So
and that's a big, big no-no. And I learned that the hard way. Just because I come in and I speak about X, Y, and Z, it doesn't mean that my clients know all the other services that I provide. So have you seen that as well?
Absolutely, Matt. You're right. You're right. And I think, and it's our job. It's on Matt and Ramon. It's our job to let them know that, because, and most of us fit into a bucket publicly, right? Hey, Ramon, you can't see my shirt, but I'm the white shirt guy. Okay, that's all he does. Or Matt, the blue shirt guy, who's wearing a beautiful blue shirt at this time. But if I don't tell people I'm also the yellow shirt guy and the green shirt guy, they don't know. So yes, and we're not going to tell them 20 things we do, but I bet there's 3 or 4 core things that you can rock better than anybody else or relatively well. To your point, Matt, let the client know, hey, listen, you hired us to do mindset consulting. Just so you know, if you also need help with, I don't know, communication skills, we do that as well. Very well, by the way. Oh, I already know, like, and trust you. And I'm going to spend the money, right, Matt? So I'd rather spend it with somebody who I know, like, and trust, and who's already in my system. Duh. Yeah. Let's get some smart hustle going.
Sure. Is there any way that you track that? Do you utilize a specific CRM? Do you have a system in place to constantly be in contact with your clients, or I guess your clients that you've already done business with?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so Keep, we use quite a bit. That's the main tool we use, Keep. But the tool, of course, I have some friends, you have to use Kajabi. You have to use MailChimp. I swear by it. I'm not one of those people. Most tools will do 80% you need. You got to find the one that works for you. But yes, I do use Keep for sure. And I think I use it for 2 or 3 different ways. There's one to manage the Ramon Ray Smart Hustle community of thousands of people. I send out a regular email newsletter every Thursday, things like that. We do that to manage that. But then we have it for our client management, 20, 30, 40, whatever it is. And then prospects, a few hundred in there. That's where it's very specific. Hey, let me follow up with so-and-so. I could use a Post-it note. That can work. But the tool enables me to click a button and say, let me follow up. And by the way, I will add, Matt, those who every Thursday at 2 p.m. who want to hear from me, you can just go to smarthustle.com and it'll have a few typos in it. So if you don't mind typos and some craziness, but if you want to hear some insight from me, Thursdays at 2 p.m., you can just sign up for that at smarthustle.com.
There we go. So Smart Hustle, this is a reoccurring live event that you put on?
Email newsletter. There's a lot I do, but the main thing is an email newsletter, just saying, hey, I was, going to the park today and here's what happened to me. And a lesson. It's a lesson, not just a graphics where I'm eating cereal, but a lesson and tips and motivation for business owners.
Okay. And that's through the Smart Hustle community.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I think you brought up a good point about really connecting, getting back in touch with the clients you've already done business with. I think that's huge. You had mentioned you've already established trust. They already are on the same page with you. Obviously, they paid you once. More than likely, they'll pay you again if you're actually solving another problem that they have. What are some other things that people should be cognizant of regarding that? Because I think that's huge. I feel like so many people don't do that. They're not tracking their conversations. They're not actually keeping in touch with their clients that they've served. So are there other elements that you utilize to make sure that that's happening? It doesn't fall through the cracks.
Yeah, that's the main thing I do. I keep it very simple. Now, those who have bigger businesses, speaking to your larger audience, if you have hundreds or thousands of customers, a team of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, you may need other systems, or at least connect the systems, make sure your sales team and marketing teams have visibility. But the same principle. But I think for those, especially who are smaller, if you just have the tool, it's a tool that can do something as simple. Is this a lead or is this a client? Are they closed? Are they not? Some common notes you can read in the discipline to look through it daily or weekly, what have you. Your business will grow. Oftentimes, it's just the touch point. And that's another thing we do, Matt. I have in my list, it's all, opt in, and I have a high open rate, a few hundred people of potential clients, the large brands I mentioned. I email them, it's not like a purposeful every week like I do for my SmartHustle community. But once in a while, I'll just say, like, for example, Matt, here's a good example. LinkedIn has a new social audio push, kind of like Clubhouse and things like that, social audio only. Many of my clients are on LinkedIn. These are B2B brands. I sent them Matt, maybe 4 lines. Hey, TechCrunch just had a little write-up that LinkedIn's launching a new social audio app. This could be a great way for you to work with your customers. P.S. If I can help you with that, let me know. That's it. I sent that to hundreds of, which is a small list for that sub list, few people. I got a reply from $1 billion brand whose software we use all the time, Matt. So that's what Ramon does. But the lesson for all, you can do that too. It's just follow up and reminding people, hey, Matt, just so you know, I'm here. And by the way, if you need, you know what I mean? So it's not, let me rephrase that. It's not telling Matt I'm here. It's more so 80% Matt, here's a valuable tip for you. Here's something I know you'll love. If you want me to help you with that, let me know. But if not, the tip is yours. That's what I do that works well.
That's a really good point. I really like those touch points. And again, I really like the element of, all right, this is easier. Like you had said, if they're going to have you speak to one, why not ask if you could speak at 20 of their events? Just going a little inch more and all the value that could provide. So the touch points do not need to be complex. I think you spoke to that. One of the things that I do, and we had mentioned CRM, so you had mentioned Keep. So my CRM of choice is Nimble. It works for me. Whatever CRM.
Yeah, I know Nimble. John Ferreira, he's there. He's a great guy.
Nice, awesome. So one of the things that I try to do all the time, be cognizant of, is having the list of clients that I'm working toward gaining. Okay, I'm working toward gaining their respect, gaining their trust. Russell Brunson, who I believe is a marketing genius, he talks about the Dream 100 list. So basically, and his is very labor intensive. He has 100 clients that he's going after, 100 prospects that he's trying to flip into clients. I don't go that broad. I don't do 100. I really focus in on about 10 to 20, depending on timing. And I basically have this reoccurring thing. And one of the things I do, and this sounds so simple, but it has done wonders for me, is I read a lot. It helps spur different elements of creativity in me. And I also, so not only do I read paperback, but I also do a lot of listening. When I'm in my car, I'm flying to an event, and I'll listen to an audiobook. As soon as something comes up that I think is applicable to one of my prospects, that I'm in the process of building a business relationship with them, I will stop what I'm doing and I will send them a message. Hey, just read this book, thought of you. Yes. There's just one chapter in it that I think you will get a ton of value out of. And it's a value add. I'm not asking for anything in return.
That's right.
And it's amazing what will come of that. Like literally a couple weeks ago, I was in the car, I kid you not, I'm listening to this audiobook. Something came up where I'm like, this speaks directly to this one prospect that I've been going back and forth with. I pulled the car over. I parked the car in this one parking lot, and I stopped and I sent this person a message right away. And then I tracked it on my mobile app with the CRM as one of the touch points. And I think I'm up to about the 17th touch point with this one individual. And this guy is going to be a gigantic client of mine in the future. So little different little things like that go a long way.
Absolutely. All day long. Yeah.
So, and you had mentioned, email marketing and the newsletter that you have. There's so many different content pieces you could pull out from that and offer value to the SmartHustle community. Is there anything else that people in the small business entrepreneur type range, they're trying to get to that $1 billion brand? Is there anything else that they should be cognizant of?
Yeah, I think it's self-promotion. We did this when we first started this call, right? This is a podcast audio only, but Matt and I are also on video. And so I took a little selfie. Sounds weird, but it's the micro touch points done a lot over a long amount of time that will make a big impact. That's it. It doesn't take complication, but it's the awareness, and everybody can't do this. It's not, but this is my thing as I help the Matt ZAUN audience, is that the micro touch points, and I'll repeat it again, done frequently over a long amount of time. So self-promote yourself, but don't just yourself, share the stage with other people. So I think that's something we can do more often, because when I share this picture, other people will see it. So those are small things you can do to kind of get to the next level. And here's what you're trying to do, Matt. You're trying to keep the awareness, your name in front of the right audience, but you need to do it so it's not offensive or irritating. A rub is good, but if I rub Matt's shoulder for 4 days in a row in the same spot, well, he'll have punched me probably dead in the face by then already. It'll be very annoying, but it sounds weird. I'm saying it, but you get my point. You do it in different places, whatever, then it's desirable. So that's kind of what it is with touch points. If it's the typical, hey, it's Thursday, just reaching out. Oh, yeah, just reaching out. Matt,
Sure.
yeah. You can hear in the audio how it's uncomfortable, right? So don't say anything yet, Matt, but everybody listen, you can hear it. So Matt, just calling. Family's okay, Matt. He knows why I'm calling. It's just ridiculous. But I'm just repeating what you said, Matt. But me calling, not too often. But yo, Matt, I know that you got a beautiful blue shirt, man. I was at Land's End. They got a deal, man. You should check it. See you later. There's no threat. Me doing that a few times, my name is in Matt's brain. And that's what you want for your clients. Now, there are ways, Matt, as you know, you have to sell. You have to make the offer. You have to have a, call and things like that. But the overall tribe, the hundreds of people that are a perfect fit, all we probably need, most of us, are a few clients, right? And to live quite well, be in touch with everybody in that way. Just like Matt said, think of your clients as you're driving and pull over.
And pull over. Yeah. Don't text and drive. So I like the value add that you had mentioned regarding taking a picture prior. So every time that there's something in my life that I'm going through an experience that I know it's going to speak to my prospects, I'm constantly trying to figure out how can I make multiple different marketing opportunities based on one event or one thing. So I really appreciate you mentioned that. I'm doing this all the time. And again, back to LinkedIn, that's my social media channel of choice. It's done wonders for me. Whenever I'm going to fly out to an event, I'm talking about it prior to going to that event. Then when I go to the event, I'm talking about it at the event. After the event, I'm talking about different places people recommended that I go and check out after the event, and I'm talking about it then. So from one different event, I'm doing between 3 and 7 different content pieces. And I feel like a lot of people, especially CEOs and executives of medium-sized companies, I feel like they are not doing that. I feel like the entrepreneurs are, because they recognize how important organic reach is on social media platforms. I feel like the big businesses are because they have the capital to hire people like social media managers that can do that. I feel like the medium-sized companies, I feel like it's lost. And it's so unbelievably important. Prime example. I was recently speaking out in Orange County, California. After the event, someone said, hey, if you have time and you're already going northbound, why don't you check out Malibu? I did multiple pieces regarding my time in Malibu, talking about different places. People said, you have to go check this out. And now I'm indirectly talking about what I did with my workshop and speaking from a lens of a recreational trip that I took after the speech. So it's not me directly marketing, hire me as a speaker. I'm indirectly telling them through the different stories that I'm posting out. So I appreciate you mentioning, taking the picture, because one little tiny thing could yield you more results, more exposure as you're putting out your content pieces. So I appreciate you mentioning that.
You're welcome.
So what are some other things that you would recommend people do in, let's say, Q1 of this year? Let's say by the end of Q1, they are a business, they're doing well, they may have gotten their first round of funding, they're doing what you're saying regarding duplicating efforts, they're contacting their clients that they've already worked with, expressing other services that they're going through. They're looking at every element from a marketing content perspective. What are some other things that you would recommend they do that come the end of the first quarter of this year, they're ready to go to have not just a good year, but an awesome year as it continues to go?
Sure. I think one is very important, that they say thank you quite often. That's one, to those clients they're already working with. I think 2, I find it's a little bit woo-woo, but wake up with an element of gratitude. And I think your health is so important. I think number 3, segment your customers. All customers are not the same, and even your prospect list. That's important. And I think number 4, don't forget to pay attention to your team. Who are the people who are riding with you on the ride, whether it's a part-time contractor or whether it's a more full-time role? But your team is important. Do they know what you're doing? Do they know where you're going? Do they know the game plan? Even if it's changing, do they know the game plan? So those are a few things that I highly recommend that people consider as they're growing their businesses. Make sure you follow up and know your team and et cetera, et cetera. I think it's utmost important.
So let's talk about the first one, because I
Please.
think there are different elements. You had said gratitude and being thankful. So what are some things that you do or you recommend your clients do to actually express gratitude?
Sure. And I think part of it, Matt, is just being grateful. I think sometimes we get into this thing, oh man, I got to pay my taxes. Oh man, I got to go to the post office. Man, the client sent me a $2 million check on Friday night. Oh, I'm sitting with my family. Why? I got to go to the bank on Monday and deposit the $2 million check. Do you hear yourself? Are you listening? I mean, so it's things like that, Matt. Oh, Chipotle didn't have extra avocado sauce. Well, that's okay. Get more rice. I'm having fun here, Matt, but I'm sure you get what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
It's just being grateful. And I learned this from an interview you may want, Danelle Delgado. She says, well, one, she says, who loses if I don't win? That's one. But the aspect of also reframing, instead of saying, and I'm sure you've maybe already know this from other people, but not saying I have to, but saying I get to. So that's, I think, reframing that. And does that mean we're happy to pay $75,000 in taxes? But Matt, if we're paying $75,000 in taxes, I mean, something's going well, meaning we may need to talk to an accountant to be a little smarter, but that means we made some money. God bless America, right? So those are the things I meant. I don't mean to be sappy, but I hope that's helpful for somebody.
So it's the mindset shift of going from I have to this is something I get to do.
Right.
It's from a mindset of gratitude.
That's right.
So I think there's different things that are creative that are next to no money at all to do that I feel like a lot of people don't do. That's so unbelievably important. So as an example of that, you had mentioned about, taking a picture, something so simple, so easy to do, extremely easy that could pay off in major dividends. I do think there's a space for written thank you cards.
Absolutely.
Right? So I feel like it's a huge missed opportunity because right now people are so bombarded with noise when it comes to social media, when it comes to email, when it comes to text. And when they get something in the mail, it does stand out. It does cut through a lot of that noise. And so few people are doing it. Yeah. And it's been invaluable to me. It's so easy to do. It takes, a matter of moments. Yeah. And again, it's almost next to no money. You're talking about 50 cents that there's a lot that people get from that. I mean, I could tell you how many handwritten notes I got last year, and it wasn't many. I got about 5. Right. So those are the ones that are going to stick out to me the most as people going that extra mile. Actually, not even extra mile, extra inch to do it. So little things like that, I think, go a long, long way. All right. So we covered a lot of ground. We talked about touch points, how important it is to stay in contact with your prospects and your clients. We talked about doing just little tiny sliver variations that are going to pay off big time for you, just having a little bit more of an inch that you're going with these different asks. We talked about having an attitude and a mindset of greatness. What are some other things that you teach the SmartHustle community?
Yeah, I think part of it, I think the big mantra is the marketing stack that we've talked about, touched on a bit. And part of the marketing stack, it could be attract, sell, wow. I may have mentioned that in different ways on this discussion with you, but I think that principle of what's my attraction strategy? What's my selling strategy? And selling really is nurturing the customer, building your fan base. Part of, what I talk about in my book, Celebrity CEO, and then wowing. And we've touched on this, but the wowing is, can I get a referral from them? Can I get them to come back and buy from me more and more and more? What can I upsell them to? So that's the attract, sell, wow. That's one thing I would highly suggest in the marketing stack. I think too, as leaders, Matt, what's very important, and I learned this from Gino Wickman, I believe it is, his book Traction, as I look on my shelf there, is the aspect of just understanding you're looking for your coffee too, right? You got you looking at how we're better leaders. What's our purpose, values, mission, things like that are very important. That's point 2. And I can go on here for hours. Point 3, and I'll end on this to give some space here, is John Acuff talks about this in his book, Soundtracks. What are the things that are playing over and over our mind, that the mindset thing, as you said, that are dragging us down? What are the things that Ramon experienced as a little boy, as a young man, people who made fun of him or bullied him or whatever it is, that little boy inside me is still unhurt, is still not healed? Those are things that are so important.
Yeah, let's highlight the attract, sell, wow. Simple, not easy, but simple. And obviously you can expand on that a lot more, but that is really key right now in the marketplace. How are people attracting prospects to them? How are they selling? And then ultimately, how are they wowing? You're not going to go from good to great to coin Jim. I believe it was Collins that did the Good to Great book. You're not going to go from good to great without wowing people. So the attraction part, you doing something as simple as taking that picture. That's another thing that you can do from a content marketing perspective that could potentially attract more prospects and clients to you. And then you're basically showing the value that you offer. That's the selling piece, and then the wowing piece. And I feel like people focus so much on these complex different things that they get lost with something as simple of a formula as that can have a lot of meat and weight to it. And one of the things I talk about in my workshop all the time is the difference between wisdom and knowledge. Mm-hmm. Often wisdom caters to the flashy, the new, the sexy, the something that is the new, the shiny, but wisdom really focuses and caters to the simple. And wisdom focuses in on that simple, and they figure out how can they expand that out further, and how could they deliver that simple value on a much deeper level. So I really appreciate you mentioning the attract, sell, wow, because it is simple, but there's a lot that businesses can do to utilize that and not deviate from it. Because I feel like when we go through all these different elements of these complex things, that's where a lot of stuff gets lost in the business world, wouldn't you say?
I would say absolutely. No, you're right. So many of the things are simple. And I think that when we don't focus on, I think things can be complicated, but as I tell my son, even getting to space, there's a lot of complications. I couldn't do it, but Matt, if I can't explain it, we're on Earth, there's this thing called gravity. We have to figure out a way that can break gravity. That's called propulsion. Other than to keep in mind, I'm not a space person, by the way, so I could be wrong on this. Those listening to me, feel free to tell Matt, this guy's way off his rocker, but just play with me here. The third thing is there's trajectory, right? I'm guessing based on movies and some simple science, you got to make sure you're going in the right trajectory and thrust and all these things. Then let's keep in mind a very minor thing. It's not very important, Matt, but there's no air in space. Not really important. Don't even think about it, but just so people know there's no air, you got to account for that. And maybe the fifth, Matt, you got to come back down. There's a lot of heat when you come back down. I broke down space travel. Play with me, Matt, audience, play with me here, but you get what I mean in 5 or 6 steps. That's the basics. There's details, but that's like business, right? Which you got to market and somehow you got to sell somehow. The leadership structure is important. The team you're having is important. You get those 4 or 5 things wrong, and you'll find that in business, it's usually one of those things in the mindset that are going wrong that are preventing people from growth. And I'm guessing, Matt, these are the kind of things that you help your clients and you pour into people on some level. It is. So business is simple. And I try to tell people there's nothing special and there's nothing complicated. Business is, so I don't care what you're selling. So when you try to make it complicated and use all kind of weirdness, you probably may not know what you're talking about.
For sure. Yeah, a lot of weirdness. There's so many different companies I'll work with where their system is so complex that their team members can't even describe it to me. They have these incredible sales pipeline processes and all one of the most recent companies I was working with, they were taking me through point A to point B. I was flabbergasted. It almost sounded more complex than going to space, what you just referenced. And all I said was, I looked across the table at him and I said, why don't we just focus on building sound business relationships, cultivating those relationships? And everyone looked at me like it was just this revelation knowledge. Let's just create value in the marketplace, build business relationships. And you can do it by A, B, C. And we went through this process and sales started to increase and the morale started to increase because people weren't so flustered and stressed out with the complexity of what they were doing. So I really appreciate you mentioned it doesn't have to be going to space to actually grow business. So thank you so much for your time. I do want to wrap up, and in closing, I just want to make sure that people that are listening to this can easily find you. So Ramon, what are some places that people can find you? A little bit more about what you do, whether it's SmartHustle, they look into the books you've written. What's the best way that they can reach out to you and connect with you?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Matt. And thank you for being such a great interviewer. You really do listen. You're almost like Oprah Winfrey, just a slightly bit lighter in skin tone and a few other changes, but you're really good at what you do. But listen, smarthustle.com, those business owners who want our content information, want to connect with Ramon, smarthustle.com is the best place. And if you want to invite me and Matt to a stage and have some fun, host your event, MC it, ramonray.com is where you can kind of see some of the Ramon Ray mojo of what I do. But Matt, it's been great rolling with you, having fun with you and serving your community. So indeed, thank you, Matt, for what you do to the world.
Absolutely. So what I will do to make it even easier for people in the show notes, I will include links to the websites that you had mentioned, also direct people back to your LinkedIn page as well. So I'll have that. People could just click and go right there. So thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. There's a lot of different nuggets that we pulled out of our conversation today. So thank you again.
Welcome, Matt. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Stories with Traction podcast. If you have a story that you would like to share, feel free to drop an email to matt@mattzaun.com with the subject line Stories with Traction. Also, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, where I share tons of resources on how you can be a better storyteller. Remember, if you want to persuade with power and inspire those around you to action, you must share more stories.